Can we talk about your two or three most successful movies, and then in contrast, your two or three movies that weren't a success?
Okay. We're talking like financial.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say my most financially successful movie in my career was probably Edges of Darkness, which I did in 2008. It made, I want to say, was it 96? It was 96,000 in the first quarter, like when it came out. This was in
Wow.
2.8, so like in Anchor Bay was the U.S. distributor. It got a huge DVD release. It was in like it was one of those titles at Blockbuster where like most indie titles they'll be like one, two, or three. This had like rows.
Oh, wow.
Like rows 6 or 7. And it was all over Hollywood Video. And I don't think I probably won't ever have one that does like that good again. Well, hopefully I will, but that one did really well. And honestly, it was just, and I wasn't involved in the distribution or marketing of it because it was all through Anchor Bay, and Shoreline was our sales agent. But I think that came down to just it was the right genre at the right time. It was like before Walking Dead or right at the beginning of Walking Dead. I can't remember which, but it was like zombie stuff, and I did the subgenre combining thing. So it was like zombies. It was a zombie apocalypse, but it was a story about like vampires trying to survive in the zombie apocalypse. Like zombies are eating all their food. So I think that mishmash really helped it. And it was also it was a very diverse cast. At a time when diverse casting wasn't happening that much at that level. And that did well. In the documentaries, I did one about 2 years ago called Alien Contactee, and to be frank, it's technically not one of my better documentaries. It's mostly a single interview. We had trouble with the sound. It's not the best shot. I didn't have really good B-roll for it, but the subject, the interviewee, he was so engaging, and he has such a strong like following that wants and needs his information that it did really well. Like it was doing 4 or 5 thousand a month, for almost a year. And this is something that we made like literally for nothing. Like shot the interview with the guy. I think I edited it in like 6 or 7 days, like really quick. And and didn't have much hope for it. I was kind of like, we'll see what it does. And it took off, you know.
Sorry, who was is he like an expert?
Yeah. His name's Dr. Luis Turi. He's a astrology guy, and he speaks. He was an alien contactee. He was someone that's had, experiences, meeting or seeing aliens. And he has a website where people sign up and they get his astrology stuff, and he has a pretty big following. So one thing, especially in the streaming world, if you have a subject or an actor that's going to gain, or a influencer that's going to gain a lot of early momentum for your movie, that momentum can carry it to a bigger audience. Because they're basically training the algorithm who to show the movie to. So if you have a movie like Alien Contactee, where this guy has, I think he had like maybe 10,000 regular subscribers on his website, which isn't a huge number. But if you have, 5 or 6,000 of them that watch that movie in the first week, and they're all like perfectly targeted for him. So the algorithm's going to show it to more people like them. And that's how things, go viral. And that it basically went, like the Amazon equivalent of viral. And did really well. And that was one that ended up getting purged on Amazon, but then it got picked back up later and started making money again, just not quite as much. And it stayed steady, and it keeps getting on new platforms. It's doing well on YouTube, really well. And then another one in the paranormal was the I Want to Believe. It was a UFO documentary. We went to a UFO convention and just like bum rushed the speakers. Like, hey, can we get you over in the corner and shoot an interview for 50 minutes? We had one guy that agreed to do like a 2-hour with us, and that was Nick Pope, who he used to be the British. Shoot, I forget his title. Something in defense. He was basically like the British Mulder, and from X Files.
Right.
And he would. We interviewed him for 2 hours. So he was kind of the main part of it, and then we interviewed another 6 people for it. But it did all the interviews over the course of 2 days. I think I spent less than a month editing it. Maybe 3 weeks. And it was a lot of stock B-roll and, then B-roll from the convention, but it turned out really well. And that community, I think was really hungry for a documentary that wasn't all, woo-woo and exploitive. It was just very like brass tacks. This is what ufology is. This is why we believe in it. And, that continues. It was never one of those that just took off and did 5,000 in a month or nothing. I think the most it ever made in a month was maybe 1,500, but it's been out for 2 years and it's stayed there every month. Yeah, and it's getting on new platforms. It just kicked off on a new YouTube channel and it's doing really well. So that continues to do great. And then narrative wise, the company I was working for, and again, I don't have their books, I just have their word for it. But the Talking Dog movie, that probably outdid the Edges of Darkness, maybe 500,000 or 600,000.
And then the ones that didn't do so well, what do you think was the difference?
So, Rise of the Undead, my first one, and Trap, that was my third movie. Both of those, I really made them in the dark, not thinking about audience or any of that. This is the movie I'm going to make. I don't know who's going to watch it or where. I'm just going to make it and try to find distribution. And I did, but neither of those movies did very well. Rise of the Undead, in the first iteration of that, I didn't see anything off of it. We did the deal with York Entertainment, who was pretty notoriously not great back then. That they're not in business anymore. And then Trap, I'm trying to remember who distributed Trap. I don't even remember. I don't remember who distributed, but I didn't make much money from that one. Actually was only with a distributor for about a year. And then I talked them into releasing me from the contract and did self-distribution with it. Made a little bit. And Trap was so low budget that I think it actually did eventually make its budget back. It was I think we made it for 5, but not that well. But the bigger one that really, and the one that pretty much made me almost quit filmmaking was The Campus, or it's called Death Day now. ITN changed the title. So that one kills me. So we shot it in 2018, and I'd done all the other movies, and I was basically trying to follow the business plan that AMG, the company I worked for, had laid out. Do a movie for around 50,000. You have these elements. Keep it low, and it was a single location horror movie. It had a mix of zombies, ghosts, and what do you call it? Stalker slasher movie. It was a woman that was dying over and over, and every time she died, she would come back in a different horror movie scenario. A little Death Day, but Happy Death Day, which is why the distributor actually changed the title to Death Day to ride off those coattails. But anyway, we finished it off, and what had happened was this was right. So we greenlit the movie right as Amazon was about at its peak, and as this movie was greenlit, it's when Amazon did their first take it from whatever 15 cents an hour to 5 cents an hour, took it down. And the market DVD, it was already shrinking, but it shrank really crazy between 2017 and 2018. The market just wasn't there anymore, not like it was. So the movie came out, and I was projecting it at a minimum. It was going to make 3,000 a month, but I was expecting more 20,000 a month. Came out, it made $1,200 month one, It made like $1,000 month 2, 700 month 3. It was down to 4 on month 4, and then I was like, ah. And the other big problem was initially I did not go with distribution. I was like, I'm going to self-distribute this. I'm going to do the Amazon thing, and then I'll let FilmHub do the other things. So I just done the Amazon, and it just wasn't going. I was like, God, we're never going to make even close to the budget back. And I had all of these investors and, people like talking about, hey, we need our money back. So I got a little bit like desperate, like, oh, I need to find a distributor for it. And at that point, we'd already released it, so a lot of distributors won't touch it. So I found a sales agent that could make a deal with ITN, and ITN would take it. So I did. And the sales agent deal, I didn't do my due diligence. It wasn't a great deal. And I think the movie made around 30 grand in the first year, and we never saw any of it. So I ended up threatening some legal action against the sales agent. I got out of that deal, and now my deal's directly with ITN, so I get the money directly from them, but that 30 was already gone. And it had already done its 2 years, so it's like now it makes, about $1,000 or less a quarter, and that money will just, I'll never be able to pay those people back unless I do it out of pocket, which I've kind of started to do. But yeah, and it was just, my eye wasn't on the ball. I was distracted by some other things and other business stuff, and it didn't work out.
Do you think you'll ever use a sales agent again?
I would never use a sales agent again. Never. And I'm not saying that there are not good ones or whatnot, but I just think that the market has changed. The only reason I even went to that one in the first place was because I made a huge mistake off the bat. Like if you're going to distribute a film, if you're going to self-distribute and that's what you're going to do, stick with it. Go all in, self-distribute. If you're going to do a distributor, stick with them. Stop. Don't try to pull it midway. Unless something's drastically wrong. Like honestly, if I just would have stayed the course with self-distribution, because I'm sorry, I said I was going to do FilmHub, but that's actually not 100% true, because FilmHub, I wasn't really aware of it at that time. I was just becoming aware of it. So if I just would have held on to that for a year and then done FilmHub and the other platforms, and then it would have hit Tubi, and I don't know that I would have saw the whole budget back, but I would have saw a lot more than I did. But I made the mistake of, getting desperate and going for the sales agent and the distributor, and I'm not 100% on the distributor either, but I just, I did it out of desperation, and it was a bad move.
With the Alien documentary where you went to the convention, you said it was pulled off Amazon but then put back on. Mm-hmm. Was that because watch time was low, or?
It's really hard to say. Amazon has a thing they call a customer engagement ranking, and it's what they base how much they pay you now. And if your ranking is so under a certain amount, there is a good chance you'll get purged. But the other thing that can happen with the purging is, because people got to remember, there aren't human beings like watching all these movies. There are algorithms, there are third parties that come in, and they're just scanning stuff. They're looking for certain, key phrases or images that will spark something, and that's how red flags get sent up. So on the initial pass, something might get through that they don't like, but maybe it'll get discovered, or what they say is they're always looking at, audience data. So if you have a movie up and, 100 people click on it to watch it and they click off within 15 or 20 seconds, chances are that's going to get yanked. So I found on the few that I had purged that it had more to do with audience retention is what I would say. But I've heard other anecdotes about, stuff got pulled because it was too, the nudity was too extreme, or the violence, or, it was political. I've heard stuff like that too. But for me, it was always watch time. And to figure out your retention on Amazon, it's actually kind of easy, because in their metrics, they have like your total amount of hours watched, and then they'll have your total viewers. And if you just take the total time divided by the total viewers, it'll give you an average of how long they're watching it. You won't get the specific metrics, but you can get a ballpark. And if you have if you have a 90-minute movie and your average watch time is around 10 minutes, that's probably not great.